I discovered my grandmother had told every grandchild they were her favorite and that the others didn't understand her like they did. I found out in a group call I accidentally organized. What followed changed what my whole family thought was true. There are revelations that do not arrive with drama, that do not arrive with documents or emails sent by mistake or calls from strangers, that arrive in an ordinary conversation between people who love each other and who suddenly start comparing notes about something each one thought was only theirs. Mine arrived on a cousin's video call I had organized to coordinate my grandmother's birthday. A video call that started as logistics and that at some point I cannot precisely identify turned into something else. Into a conversation where 6 adults discovered at the same time that something each one had believed was a unique and irreplaceable relationship with the most important person of their childhood had been, in a layer none of them had seen, the same script repeated with each of them. My name is Camila. I am 35 years old. I am an organizational psychologist, and I have 5 first cousins with whom I grew up in the same city, though in different houses, and for whom grandmother Esperanza, who is 81 years old, was always the gravitational center of the family. Esperanza is the kind of grandmother who appears in movies as the character who contains everything. Always available, always with time to listen, always with the exact phrase each grandchild needed in the moment they needed it. We called her on the phone when we had problems we did not want to tell our parents. We told her secrets she kept with the discretion of someone you trusted completely. Each of us had believed for decades that we had a special relationship with her that the others did not have, that we were the favorite, that we were the one who truly understood her, that we were the real confidant. The birthday video call was where we discovered that belief was universal among the 6 of us. The video call had been my idea. Grandmother's birthday was in 3 weeks, and I wanted to coordinate with the cousins what we were going to do, who could travel, how we were going to organize the celebration. There were 6 of us on the call. Me, my cousin Valentina, my cousin Rodrigo, my cousin Isabel, my cousin Marcos, and my cousin Lucia. Esperanza's 6 grandchildren. The first 20 minutes had been pure logistics. Dates, travel, budget for the gift. And then Valentina said something that in that moment sounded like a casual comment, but that was the thread that when we pulled it dismantled something none of us expected to dismantle that night. Valentina said she was really looking forward to seeing grandmother because it had been a while since they had talked with their usual depth and that grandmother was the only person in the family who truly understood her. Rodrigo said he felt the same. I said I did too. And then there was a brief silence where the 6 of us were processing that we had just said the same thing. Isabel was the first to name it. She said, "Wait, do all 6 of us feel like we are the grandchild grandmother truly understands?" Nobody responded immediately. Then we all said yes at the same time. And what followed was 2 hours of conversation none of us had planned, and that was the most disorienting and most important conversation we have had as a group of cousins in our adult lives. What we discovered in those 2 hours, I'm going to tell in the way it arrived. In layers, each one more specific and more uncomfortable than the last. The first layer was the most general. Each of us had believed for years that we had a special relationship with grandmother that the others did not have. That we were the favorite. That we were the one who understood her. That we were the real confidant. That in itself could have had an innocent explanation. Perhaps grandmother was genuinely good at making each grandchild feel special. But the second layer was where the innocent explanation started not to be enough. Rodrigo recounted that grandmother had told him explicitly on multiple occasions that he was the grandchild who understood her best. That the others, and she had mentioned specific names, had a way of relating to her that was more superficial. That only with Rodrigo could she talk about certain things. Isabel said grandmother had told her exactly the same thing about herself, with the same names of the supposedly more superficial grandchildren, which included Rodrigo. Marcos said the same to him. Valentina said the same to her. Lucia said the same to her. I said the same to me. All 6. The same conversation. The same approximate phrases. The same names of grandchildren who supposedly did not understand her. Each one named as the superficial one in the conversation with another. The third layer was the most specific and the most difficult. We started comparing not just the general pattern, but concrete instances. Rodrigo recounted that when he had gone through his divorce 4 years ago, grandmother had told him the other cousins had not asked about him because they were too busy with their own lives, but that she always thought about him. Isabel said that during that same period, grandmother had told her that Rodrigo was going through something difficult and that it hurt her that the cousins were not more present for him, but that she did not want to interfere. Rodrigo looked at her through the screen. He told her he had not known she had known about his divorce at that time. Isabel told him grandmother had told her, in confidence, telling her not to let Rodrigo know she knew because Rodrigo was very private. We continued comparing. What emerged from that comparison was a pattern that I, as a psychologist, recognized with a clarity that in that moment was simultaneously professional and deeply personal. Grandmother told each grandchild's secrets to other grandchildren, presenting them as confidences of concern. She told each grandchild they were the most special while describing the others as less close or less understanding. She generated in each one the feeling that the relationship with her was unique and irreplaceable and that the others did not have access to that depth. And in parallel with the information she collected from each one, she built an image of family omniscience that reinforced her central position. She was not the grandmother who knew everything because she was wise. She was the grandmother who knew everything because each grandchild told her everything, believing they were the only real confidant. And the information circulated among everyone through her, but never directly between us. There was a moment in the call where the silence lasted several minutes. 6 adults processing at the same time something that reorganized not only how they understood their grandmother, but how they understood decades of their own family history. Lucia was the first to speak after that silence. She said she did not know whether what we were describing was manipulation or whether there was a more innocent explanation. I told her I understood the need for that question, but I had it too. That as a psychologist, I could describe the pattern we had identified with clinical terms that did not make it easier to process emotionally. That what we had described was consistent with a pattern of relational triangulation where a central person maintains their position of importance by controlling the flow of information between others and generating in each one the feeling that the relationship with her is the most valuable one available. That this could be the result of a conscious and calculated strategy, or it could be the result of a bonding style grandmother had developed throughout her life, and that for her was simply the way she related to the people she loved. That the difference between those two possibilities mattered for understanding the person, but did not change the effect it had had on each of us. Marcos asked what we were going to do with what we had discovered. It was the right question and the hardest one, because we had options and none of them were simple. We could do nothing. Continue relating to grandmother as always, now with additional information that allowed us to see the pattern without naming it. We could confront her, have a conversation with her about what we had discovered and see what emerged. We could change the way we related to each other as cousins, building direct channels that did not go through her, without necessarily confronting her. Or we could some combination of the three. What we decided that night was not definitive. It was the beginning of a process that is still ongoing. What we did decide was something none of us had done before that night, to keep talking to each other directly, not through grandmother, not with information filtered by her, directly, like the adults we were, and that in some way we had stopped being with each other because we had a central channel that seemed more efficient and warmer than direct communication. In the 3 months since that video call, we 6 cousins have talked more than in the previous 10 years. Not always about grandmother, sometimes about our lives, which turn out to be more interesting and more complicated than we knew, because most of what we knew about each other came filtered through a source that had its own reasons for presenting things a certain way. The conversation with grandmother Esperanza we had, not all 6 together, because that seemed excessive and potentially cruel given that she's 81 years old and that what we were going to tell her was something that could reorganize her own understanding of decades of relationships. It was had by Valentina, who is the oldest of the group and who has the longest relationship with grandmother, and me, who am a psychologist, and who could help the conversation have a structure that was neither accusatory nor evasive. We told her what we had discovered on the video call, not with anger, with the honesty of people who love someone and who at the same time need that person to know what their way of relating had produced in the people they loved. Grandmother Esperanza's response was what we did not expect. She did not defend herself. She did not say we had misinterpreted. She did not say what we had described was not true. She stayed in silence for a time, and then she told us something none of us knew. She told us she had grown up in a family where affection was scarce and competed for, where her mother had used exactly the same mechanism with her and her siblings, where feeling special to someone depended on the others being a little less special, that she had learned that was how closeness was built, that she had never thought of it as something she did consciously, that it was simply the way she had learned to love, and that hearing us describe the effect it had had on us was the first time she had seen it from the outside. I do not yet know exactly what to do with that response. None of the six of us does, because it changes the conversation in a way that is both easier and more complicated. Easier because the intention was not to harm. More complicated because the harm existed regardless of the intention, and because understanding its origin does not undo it. What I do know is that Grandmother Esperanza turned 81 surrounded by her 6 grandchildren, with a conversation among all of us that was different from all previous ones. More direct, less mediated, with uncomfortable moments none of us would have allowed before, because we would have found a way to redirect them toward her as arbitrator. It was the most honest birthday we have spent together, and perhaps for that reason the most real. What I want you to take from this story has parts for different people. For those who recognize the pattern I described in someone in their family. Relational triangulation does not always come from a place of calculated malice. Sometimes it comes from a learned bonding style that the person who exercises it does not see as a problem because it is simply the way they learn to build closeness. Understanding the origin does not change the effect, but it changes the conversation you can have about it. For those who recognize themselves in the cousin's position, if you have believed for years that you have a special and unique relationship with someone who is central to your family, it is worth asking yourself how much of what you know about the other members comes from that central person and how much comes from direct communication. Not as paranoia, as awareness that all information that passes through an intermediary also carries the intermediary's perspective. And for everyone, the most important conversations you can have with the people who matter in your life are the direct ones. The ones that do not need an arbitrator. The ones that do not pass through someone who filters them, even if that someone loves you. The clarity that direct communication produces can be uncomfortable, but it is the only one that gives you a version of reality that is not edited by another person's interests, even if those interests are affectionate. If this story moved you, comment. Is there someone in your family who is the center of all information and who intentionally or unintentionally filters what each person knows about the others? Like if you believe bonding patterns learned in childhood can cause harm in subsequent generations, even without intent to harm. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is navigating complicated family dynamics and who might need a language to name what they are living. Reflection to take with you. The person in your family who seems to know everything about everyone does not always know it because they are wise or because everyone trusts them. Sometimes they know it because they have built a system where each person tells them everything believing they're the only one who does. Asking yourself where the information you have about the people you love comes from is one of the most useful questions you can ask about the health of your family relationships.